Welcome to this week's very special 100th episode of the Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonny Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week, I talk with Minnesota United Football Club forward Aaron Schoenfeld. We talk about life in the bubble of Orlando, what it was like playing for both big Tel Aviv clubs, and taking penalty kicks under pressure on this week's Who the Folk podcast. Aaron Schoenfeld, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast for episode 100 of our podcast. Thanks for joining us for the milestone.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
So, being a professional athlete, you're forward for the Minnesota United Football Club, the Loons. So much of being an athlete is about routine, and this year has been anything but that. I mean, this has to have been the hardest thing you've experienced as an athlete.
Oh, for sure. Physically, it's difficult. You're doing essentially multiple preseasons, just trying to stay fit. And mentally, it's uncharted territory. It's tough, your mind will wander and, you find yourself thinking all the time, what's next, what next. And it's just so much of the unknown right now.
So before we started recording, you mentioned you're back in Minneapolis now. You're out of the bubble of Orlando. What was the experience of being trapped, I suppose, for lack of a better term, in Disney World for a month?
It was really tough, actually. Obviously it's not an easy situation for anyone.
Sure.
Everyone's got loved ones, a lot of guys on our team are married with children, and, I can't imagine what those guys went through. But, we were there for over 40 days. You just miss having any bit of freedom, to have a nice coffee or to go buy your own groceries or to pick what food you're going to eat. Just the little things, and obviously I'm not complaining, we were fed really well and, all of that we were taken care of, but it's just hard when you lose a bit of freedom, like certain hours that you're able to, that the team is able to use the pool for recovery. For instance, one day we went and played mini golf, and it was probably the most fun I had out there outside of soccer. And, you're ushered off the course at like exactly 1 hour, and that stuff you can't even finish, and that's the stuff where it's like, oh my God, you wish so bad to have any bit of freedom.
God, that's brutal. I mean, it's great. I suppose the trade-off to that freedom is at least you got to play.
Exactly. Also, it's just everyone wants to play. So that obviously made it a lot easier for us. But, it's just, like I said, I can't even imagine what the guys on the team who went with that are married and have their children. I remember seeing the day we left, Ozzy Alonso came with his family, and I remember seeing his daughter crying. And I was sitting on the bus, like, obviously for my situation, it's not easy, but can you imagine what these guys are going through?
Right. And I've been to a number of Loons games at Allianz last year, and you see the players who have kids after the game, especially after a win, after they salute the Wonderwall, they'll grab their kids and they'll run around with their kids on the field. And there is such that bond that they have, that the kids have, obviously to their fathers, but also to the team, and that they have to be left for so long. It's got to be almost impossible for them.
I remember when I was a kid, if my father left for the weekend for a business trip, it was like the longest 3 days of my life. I can't imagine what, a 5-year-old boy or girl is thinking when their father's gone for 41 days.
Right. And now for you personally, you also had the sort of interesting experience that your girlfriend, Abby Dahlkemper, who plays for North Carolina Courage in the Women's National Soccer League, was also going through a similar bubbling experience in Utah.
Yeah.
Did you guys compare notes at all about what that was like?
We would call, and it's, your days are boring. So that's what we talk about, right? They were in a bit of a different situation than us. They were in an embassy suite with 3 other teams. And, we were fortunate enough to be in a resort and all that, a little more space to walk. But there's obviously topics that we talk about and just, both waiting for the day to have some freedoms.
Yeah. So, when did you know growing up that pro soccer was going to be an option for you? Because obviously kids, did you gravitate towards other sports before you sort of settled on soccer?
No, my brother played soccer when I was young, and, obviously you look up to your older brother. He was 4 years older than me, and I just wanted to do what he did. So I started playing, and, you love the game, and, I would imagine most of us at this level, when you're a kid, you know, and you're 5, 6, whatever, 7 in your hometown, you know, you're beating up on the other kid. You know, or you know, you were, I don't know. At that age, it was, you know, so easy, and you felt like you were like had a natural gift for the sport, and so you chase it as long as it'll go. And you know, it became into high school, like, let's try to get a scholarship, and then you get into college, and you know, your first couple of years, you don't really know what it's about, and you start having some success on the collegiate level, and then you start to see guys that are getting drafted, and you know, you tell yourself you're as good as them, if not better. And then, you know, that senior year, you just hope, man, and it happens. And you know, the draft is essentially just a glorified tryout, unless you're one of the, you know, generation Adidas guys or whoever's guaranteed. But essentially, it's just your tryout, you know, to wherever you're drafted to.
So what was the youth soccer scene like growing up in Knoxville, Tennessee? Was soccer a big sport? I mean, as somebody who watched a lot of football, that's like the heart of SEC country. That's
yeah,
it's like American football country.
Yeah. It's, I mean, obviously Knoxville lives or dies by the, you know, University of Tennessee. But I don't know, you kind of get yourself inside the community, and maybe it feels bigger than it is, you know, looking back, because, you know, I remember as a kid, it was nonstop soccer. You know, all my friends played, everyone I was associated with played. You know, every weekend, you know, to get games that are competitive, you're driving 3 to 6 hours every weekend to go play 2 games to have some competition. You know, from Knoxville, you go to Atlanta, or you know, maybe even drive to North Carolina, to Raleigh area, or Charlotte, or you know, down to Florida. And you know, a lot of my childhood was spent just driving in the car with my parents. And now, I talked about it with my parents. It was awesome. You know, you're forced at those ages to, you know, bond with your parents that normally a 14-year-old kid or a kid going through puberty doesn't care. You know, not to say they don't care, but there's other things that are on their agenda at that age.
Sure.
So it was nice to kind of build that bonding relationship. You know, you're in the car with your parents on an average 3 to 6 hours each direction on the weekend. And, you know, you're talking about school, you're talking about girls, you know, you're talking about everything. So.
Yeah. So growing up Jewish, you mentioned that age and how much time, you know, obviously the better you get, the more time it requires. How was it growing up Jewish and, you know, somewhat observant and committed to the ritual side of Judaism, while also committing all that was necessary towards your soccer?
Yeah, I mean, I specifically remember missing games for Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah, and you know, when you're young, you're pissed. You don't understand why your dad's making you, sit in the synagogue, fasting for 25 hours, and you don't really understand it. And as a kid, it was tough on me. I remember fighting with my dad, like, why? But looking back, I'm happy. I'm proud of what I've done, and obviously in the South and especially in Knoxville, there's a handful of Jews,
Okay.
and you go to high school, maybe, I don't know, on average 5 to 10 in your high school. So when I went to Israel, it's the first time I was really surrounded by the culture.
We're going to talk more about your experience in Israel, but first, a quick word from our sponsors, Milovitz, Gallup, and Milovitz.
I am Alan Milovitz, and I have been helping injury victims for over 30 years. If you have been a victim of an injury or accident, don't sign anything until you have spoken to an attorney. You could be signing away your right to fair compensation. If you have been injured, call us. We want to help. We will make a time to talk about your case. You can reach Milovitz, Gallup, and Milovitz at 763-560-0000. That's 763-560-0000.
So you mentioned Israel. Now, you signed for Minnesota United, I guess in February, was it? January?
Yeah.
Okay.
February.
So you came right into training camp starting, but you signed from Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel.
Yeah.
What were those last 4 years like playing professionally in Israel?
Yeah, it's an experience of a lifetime. I mean, I'm so fortunate, so grateful that I was given that opportunity and was able to make my life and just kind of choose my path over there. It's such a different culture, such a different environment to be in. And I mean, I really just don't know how to describe it. I'm so, like I said, so thankful and so grateful for everything I was able to do over there.
Was there a special draw to playing in Israel and not just anywhere overseas after, you started your MLS career with Columbus?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember when it was coming up, when I was going to be a free player, I remember speaking with my agent, options. A lot of Americans will go to Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and the Scandinavian countries. And I remember, I had this offer in Israel or, this opportunity to go. And I remember for me that, it's just your right of return. You know what I mean? As, as a Jew and especially a Jewish American that I've never been. And, for me, I just thought it would be more unique, more special to go there.
So you got to play, I mean, Maccabi Tel Aviv, for people who don't know, is arguably the biggest club in Israel, right?
The biggest
club. Not
yeah.
arguably, it is the biggest club in Israel.
That's the fight with Maccabi Haifa and Maccabi Tel Aviv. So this is the fight of it.
No, but you also got to play on both sides of the Tel Aviv derby, which is the rival. For those who don't know, the derby is the rivalry game between teams of the same city.
Yeah.
What was that like having? I mean, there can't be a lot of players who cross the divide that way.
No, it's tough when you cross the road, but I've seen it from both sides. Hapoel Tel Aviv's, generally the working class people. They're both great. Maccabi's more of an upper class fan base, but I've been on both sides. I was fortunate enough to get to Maccabi. But my first, I played 2 games at Maccabi Netanya before I signed at Hapoel Tel Aviv. But it's just, I don't know. It was fortunate to see both perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
You're on one side who's just trying to get a point. Essentially a draw is a good result, and then you go to Maccabi, and anything less than a win is the worst thing in the world. So
I've had the pleasure and privilege to go to Europe to see both club games and national team games. One thing I think that's really hard for me as a fan to try to explain is the passion that comes with it.
Yeah.
Do you feel that on the pitch when you're playing?
Yeah, especially in Israel. The people of these clubs are around for over 100 years, 120 years, these clubs. And so you have 5-6 generations of born identity and love for, the club.
Yeah.
And, especially over there, if you lose a game, I don't know, every fan, 50, 100, 200,000 fans, that are in the city, even the 20 at the stadium, their week is ruined if you lose the game, literally their week is ruined if you lose a game. With these, it's crazy,
It's
and
crazy.
in America, obviously our league's young, 25 years, you do have real fans, you have true fans. I just don't think you have the generational fans that are in
Not
Europe.
yet.
And my children's generation, maybe my grandkids, you'll start to have these generational fans that are living and dying by the club, and for instance, over there, on the streets, I'm not saying everyone, but you see so many people with the tattoos of the clubs they represent, or the emblems of either Hapoel or Maccabi, or the Beitar, any political symbol. These people represent their clubs all over their body.
And you mentioned, that Maccabi Tel Aviv tends to be more of the elite side of the elite, upper class club, as opposed to Hapoel, which is more working class. Clubs traditionally throughout Europe do tend to attach themselves a little more to movements, political and otherwise, than they would.
Yeah, of course.
So it's it really is interesting, and I think it's such a foreign concept to people here.
Yeah. It's true. All these clubs, essentially there's 3 political parties, and each club really took their own stance, and this is where the fans come from, based off the city and the political stance.
God, that's it's so fascinating to hear about it, and to have lived the experience of playing through it is very cool. What made this the right time to come back to the States, and fortunately for us, to Minnesota?
Yeah, no, I mean, my contract was ending, in 6 months from when I signed, and they offered me to stay, but I just felt, I was getting older, turning 30, I was dating Abby, and so it was a good moment to come back. Want to prove yourself back in the States, and show what you gained over the 4 years and the way you matured. And all of us families are getting older, and just be closer to the family was a huge thing for me.
So now, the first game in the bubble was against Kansas City. You came on as a sub, and I don't think it's, I think it's fair to say you changed the game coming on. Everything, you hit the crossbar, you drew the red card on the goalie. I mean, everything happened after you came on. You've come on, I mean, you started a couple games down there. You've been a sub other times. What's the difference in the mentality starting from minute 0 versus coming on, maybe chasing a goal with 15 minutes left?
I think as a starter, I think if you ask anyone, starting the game, it's tough. You have a lot of responsibility. Minute-wise, you're going to be tired, but it's much easier to get in the flow of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you come on as a sub, guys been going for 60, 65, whatever, 70 minutes, and you come in and, you're at a bit of a slower pace, mentally, physically, everyone's fully warm. You're trying to catch up. But I think as a sub, you just try to make any impact you can, If it's creating maybe you need to hustle, you need to chase down a few more balls because maybe your winger's tired, or you just try to give some impact anywhere you can. So I think it's a different mindset you have to come into the night with, for sure.
Yeah. And you're a big guy. You're 6'4"?
Yeah,
so
6'3".
6'3", 6'4". So you're very tall. You're, in soccer parlance can be more of a target man. The balls come in from the wing. You're a good sized target to try to aim for. But I think one of the things that impressed me was sort of the speed. You're not afraid to take off on a run down the wing and get into space either.
Yeah, no. Fortunately, I come from a family of runners. My dad was really athletic, and so for me, I think what separates me than a lot of big men are that I can run. I have enough speed to get into channels. I can go, one-on-one into the channels, and I'm not only, like a big target guy that's sitting, but between the 18, just waiting for balls to come in.
Right. So the Columbus game, that was really interesting because obviously that was your first team in MLS that you played for. And you got to take a penalty in the shootout and were successful with it. In a shootout situation, what goes through your head? How do you keep yourself calm and in the moment?
Yeah, I mean, pressure is whatever you make it. Obviously that was an elimination game. You're in the first round of the bubble playoffs. And I don't know. You can make the situation a lot more difficult than it needs to be in your head. If you go up there, tell yourself, it's just like training. At the end of training, you see, 5, 6, 7 guys every training just joking around taking penalties. And you tell yourself it's the same mentality, and you just go up and hit it. And if you put it on frame, the goalie makes a good save, then so be it, But, you just try to, strike a good, clean ball. And, obviously, if you hit it good, you have a high percentage of it going in,
You got to at least hit the target.
You got to hit the target.
You can't miss the goal.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes guys get a little cute and try to go, top corner. And, when you're hitting it, it's great. But when you miss it, it looks bad. And just try to hit a ball with good power, good pace. And, just try to stay away from that middle zone. Either keep it on the ground or go high. The middle zone easy for the goalie to, get his hand to.
Yeah, it's too easy a height for him.
Yeah, and modern day soccer now, so many guys have the confidence, the balls, to say to go down the middle. When you're younger, it's too scary to go down the middle.
Oh,
but now,
absolutely.
And goalies, at the professional level, to save a ball, you essentially need to jump early, because of how hard guys are hitting it now. And
right.
A lot of times now you can catch guys in the middle.
Yeah. So you're back now in Minnesota, as we said. The season restarts the 21st.
Yeah.
Once again against Kansas City. The I guess closest thing we have to a rival up here right now.
Yeah.
You've been back in training for a couple days now. What's it like sort of being back home and trying to get into I guess what passes as a normal routine again when you have so much uncertainty left in the season?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's tough. We had a couple of days off after the bubble. Everyone got to be with their, family, girlfriends, wives, kids, whatever it may be. Obviously to get back in the routine takes a little bit, and you're just trying to stay positive. Obviously, we have 6 games set ahead of us. We've heard rumors that it's going to be up to 18, and, you're just trying to prepare yourself for the, the best you can. And, obviously we're fit. We're down in Orlando in the heat for, 40 plus days running. So, it's nice that we're not just running all training, you're still playing. And,
right.
Fortunately we made a deep run. There's teams that, essentially, if you look at Nashville, they were out of the bubble, obviously because of Corona issues, but they came back from the bubble and it was fitness for, 3-4 weeks.
Yeah.
Obviously they won last night in Dallas, but, that's I'm thankful for that we made a deep run. So you're not like literally starting another preseason.
You mentioned the Nashville Dallas game, and I wanted to bring that up. I don't know if you saw there was a little bit of controversy, at least what came out of the crowd. The players, all that were on the field for the anthem, took the knee before the anthem, as has been done throughout the bubble starting up. And I just wanted to know what you thought about that with the fans booing the players and throwing bottles at them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with my stance, I didn't think it was too kind or too nice of the fans. I don't understand why they would start that. You have a group of players all trying to make unity in a situation. And, obviously the national anthem means something different to each and every one of us. Some guys come from a line of military families or, people who serve, and it means something different to every person there. And, obviously I have my own opinion. I think right now on sports, I don't see the point of having an anthem. It's just dividing the country more and more. And, because obviously I feel like the protests, aren't against the anthem. It's a way to get solidarity. It's not people claiming they're anti-military or anti, everything. It's, a way to raise an issue. And I think, there's people out there who are just so disgusted and can't believe people aren't standing for the anthem. And it's just making a huge divide. And, obviously I have my personal opinion. I just think the anthem should be used, for national team games. And if you look across our league, you have, some nights there's maybe one American starting on an MLS team, and is the anthem really important to the foreign players? I don't know. Obviously I'm not inside their head, but it's unusual because I think in America, but maybe it's, I can't speak for every country. Obviously I played in Israel, but it's so uncommon to hear a national anthem in other countries before sporting events. And, I have players on our team who played in Spain or, Greece and Finland, and, it's pretty unusual.
So I was going to ask you, you mentioned the experience in Israel though. Did they play Hatikva in the stadium before the game?
Yeah, Beitar Jerusalem would play it, but would be the only club that would play, the national anthem.
Right.
So, obviously, it's big discussion right now, if you've been to Twitter and everything, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion right now. And I think that should be the thing going forward, that everyone is allowed to express the way they feel. If you have a player that doesn't feel comfortable taking a knee at an anthem, it's, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. You shouldn't be, ridiculed and destroyed by people because you took a knee or if you didn't take a knee.
Right. And I think, we're fortunate in Minnesota to have somebody like Iko Para, your teammate, central defender, who is a leader in the Black players movement.
Yeah.
The sort of association that's formed in the wake of everything that's happened with George Floyd.
Yeah.
And so,
we're fortunate. Ike's an amazing leader. He's really well spoken. He's got our back in every situation. Ike's an amazing leader to have.
So with being now sort of back in Minnesota, obviously not back to normal here by any means, but and I don't know what it was like for you in Columbus, but do you have any interest, or have you in previous stops sort of connected with the Jewish community at all, where you've been at nationally?
No, I obviously I meet a couple of people always in every city who are Jewish, and we keep in touch. And there's some people in Columbus, I'd go have do kiddush with, and spend my Shabbos with. But usually I just kind of keep to myself. I prefer to be spiritual on my own. Not too big into the organized stuff, but I always meet a couple people in every city. Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, it's, again, this is a judgment-free zone. I was sort of, especially with, the life of an athlete tends to be, you're not necessarily in the city year round. You may, in the off season when that hits, you may go back to Tennessee. You may go North Carolina. You may go anywhere. You have that sort of freedom. You mentioned leaving the national anthem for national team games. You have not had the privilege of playing either for the U.S. or for Israel. Now, you do have an Israeli passport. If you were called up by the Israeli national team, would you play for them?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, at this point, I'm getting older, and it would be nice. Obviously, if I'm younger, maybe, obviously I feel more connected to the States,
Sure.
At heart, ask me, I say I'm an American.
Sure.
So obviously, I would play for the States if that happened. But, either way, I don't think it's a bad option if you have either option.
No, listen, not many people get to say they play for their country. So,
well, I was called for Israel. They were playing Croatia before the World Cup, which would have been an amazing experience.
Yeah. And
I went on, obviously the law of return and the birth, because the Jewish heritage in the family.
Yep.
And, you know, FIFA didn't acknowledge my passport at the time.
Oh, they didn't?
No.
Oh.
You know, it's difficult because, you know, it hurt. I don't know if it's factual, true, but, you know, certain countries were offering, like, Brazilian players, you know, passports to come play for the national team. So they had to make a rule where either you have to, you know, show your family's inside the country and have been there, or you have to live in the country for 5 years consecutively.
Oh, interesting.
So.
Yeah, I think there were a couple Brazilian players that played for Japan maybe in the 90s that I don't.
I heard Qatar was like one
of
them.
Some Qatar. I think you know, a lot of Brazilian players end up playing at least club in Ukraine and end up trying to get some citizenship that way. So I get them trying to clamp down, but
yeah, I understand. You know, obviously if you don't clamp down, there's going to be a lot of instances. So
wait, you think there's corruption in FIFA? I don't. What are you talking about?
I plead the fifth.
It's probably a smart move. All right, last couple of questions. Yeah. We'll let you get out of here. What is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Obviously Hanukkah as a child.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say Hanukkah.
All right.
Yeah,
that's good. And favorite Jewish food?
Definitely not Ashkenazi food. That's for sure. Some Sephardic. There's this little Yemen food was always really good, you know, full of spices. You know, they have the slug, the hot sauce, and everything that's really good. Yeah, definitely nothing that's Ashkenazi food.
It's funny. Anybody who's spent any significant amount of time in Israel will always go to something Israeli. So if there's an Israeli dish, not a specifically, you know, Jewish dish.
Oh, Israeli dish. Okay, let's go.
I'll give you that one too.
What's it called? This Moroccan fish. You've had this? It's like a spicy fish they make on for kiddush. Okay. Wow.
I have not.
It's just like essentially, you know, people do salmon or tilapia, but it's essentially just in a bed of spices. There's chickpeas with it. You know, usually really spicy. Served with like a bed of rice. That was my favorite.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Aaron Schoenfeld, Minnesota United forward, thank you so much for joining us for episode 100, and best of luck to you and the Loons as the season continues. We hope hopefully, you know, COVID withstanding, will go off without a hitch and we can be back at Allianz together next year.
I hope so, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks so much.
Have a great day.
You too. The Who the Folk podcast is part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network, a product of Jew Folk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.